After the Battle of Franklin, the Union Army continued on to Nashville. The Confederate Army was left behind. Nearly every home and business in Franklin was turned into a makeshift hospital. Here at the Carnton Plantation, the McGavick family used part of their land to make a Confederate cemetery. Over 1,400 Confederate soldiers and one civilian were buried here after the battle. Okay, so this is Johanna from Travelers Paranormal. I'm about to do the fourth challenge, the Dark Challenge in a haunted location. I'm at the Confederate Cemetery at the Battle of Franklin, so I'm going to go dark now. Okay, for some reason the night vision wouldn't turn off. Oh, there's a car coming. Hopefully they just go by. Okay. And they're leaving. So, I'm at a Confederate cemetery. So the Battle of Franklin during the Civil War was a pretty gruesome battle. I want to say it was November, very end of November in 1864. And after the battle, then every structure in Franklin was used as a hospital, and there were so many soldiers killed on both sides. There was more Americans killed here than in the Battle of Normandy, which I guess is easy to do when both sides are Americans. But is there anybody here with me? My name's Johanna. The McGavick family is the one that donated this property for this cemetery, and they took care of it themselves for years. It's over 14, almost 1,500 Confederate soldiers buried here, and one civilian who was a member of the reburial crew that became ill and passed away during that process. If there's anyone here, I may not be able to hear you, but I can listen back to this recording. Can you tell me your name? I know some people don't like investigating in cemeteries because they feel like people were put here to rest and we're disturbing them, but if there's anyone here to answer, I think they should also be listened to. You can't really see, but there's just lines and lines of small stones. Just a heavy feeling here. In a 5-hour, 6-hour span at Franklin, it's one of the last bloodiest battles of the Civil War. Like I said, just so many lives were lost. 1,500 here is just a drop in the bucket. The entire town was a small town. That happened all over the U.S. It's all of a sudden a small town and people just trying to live their lives, found themselves in the middle of a battle. And a lot of these soldiers, never getting to see their family again. If there's anyone here, do you have any messages for those still here? Can you tell me what made you join the Confederate Army? What did it mean to you? What were you fighting for? I mean, the Civil War, the American Civil War, any Civil War, really did see families torn apart, brother versus brother. Tennessee, the volunteer state, they earned their name in the Civil War with soldiers on both sides. A lot of East Tennessee was pro-Union. Middle Tennessee, West Tennessee, more Confederate. If there's anyone here, can you tell me what other battles you were in? Could you tell me what state you're from? How old were you during the Battle of Franklin? I know now I'm by where the eastern flank of the battle was. Were any of you by the Lotz house or the Carter house? Megan and I investigated at the Lotz house, which was a family at the center, basically right behind the Union lines. And I'll put the link in the description of this video, but Megan took a series of photos, and in her last photo she has an apparition that we believe may be a Union soldier. As the beginning of the Civil War was drawing near, did you think this would really happen? Like, in your mind, did you think that won't really happen? Things will get worked out? Whenever you're someplace where you see lines of graves like this, it's heartbreaking. Everyone's a life, a family. Life ended too short. I was here earlier, and it made me think of a song. I think it's The Green Fields of France. And it's really about World War I. And it talks about the rows of white crosses. And in the song at one point, he's looking at the grave of a soldier, and he's like, did you really think this war would end wars? Because by the time that song's being written, we've already had World War II. And I'm looking at gravestones from our Civil War and from battle in 1864, and if humans are good at anything else or nothing else, it's war and killing each other and fighting with each other. When you volunteered, when you joined the Army, what did you think the outcome would be? I know I asked before what you were fighting for, but I mean, we still debate today what you were fighting for. What did it mean to you to be a member of the Confederate Army? Do you ever think it could happen again? Someone who's still here and has people come and visit this cemetery, and do you think we could ever see a war like this again? What would you say to us? I feel sad. I don't know if that's paranormal or if that's just standing in a cemetery. Megan and I were at Vicksburg, and every state that had troops in the Battle of Vicksburg has different statues. I said before that Tennessee really was ripped in two, and so was Kentucky during the Civil War. And one of their statues at Vicksburg, if you ever get the chance to go there, it's a fantastic piece of art. It has a statue of Lincoln and a statue of Davis, and they're both, from a distance or from one angle, it kind of looks like they're looking at each other, but then if you go up behind them, they're looking like past each other. They're not really meeting each other, and it's just a good representation of what it was like in America, and the idea of a civil war where we couldn't really discuss our differences. It had to come to this, or it came to this. I don't know if it had to. It's very peaceful here. If there's anyone here, there's a plane flying overhead. If there's anyone here, I'm sorry for the pain and the suffering that you went through. Said Franklin was a very short and intense battle. I know I asked before, but my name's Johanna. What's your name? If there's anyone here with me? Thank you for letting me visit. As I said before when I started, this is the Confederate Cemetery at the Battle of Franklin, right by the Carton Plantation, Carton House. It was owned by the McGavics. There's a McGavick Pike in Nashville. Definitely the same family, and they cared for and kept a logbook to try and keep the identity of everyone. I think there's 200 something unidentified soldiers. Thank you for letting me visit you. Before I leave, is there any last messages you might have? I think I'm at a tall obelisk, and I think this is the obelisk that is for the unknown soldiers. Thank you for letting me visit. God bless you. May you rest easily. This field here was the eastern flank of the Battle of Franklin. During the American Civil War, fields like these all across the South became battlefields as both sides clashed violently. According to Scott Butler of the 33rd Indiana Regiment, Franklin is war-worn. The shattered glass in her churches and schoolhouses, her lonely streets and the closed shutters of her storehouses the battered doors and ruined machinery of her manufactories, and above all, that death-like, breathless silence, that absence of all sound that can be felt nowhere but at the desolate hearthstone, here reigns supreme. Later on tonight, Megan will be returning to this battlefield for an investigation.
So, this is Megan from Travelers Paranormal, and I am completing the 4th challenge of What the Paranormal's Paragate games. This challenge is an in the dark challenge. It is to go to a haunted location in the dark for 15 minutes. So the location that Joe and I have picked is the Battle of Franklin, and where we are is the park that is the eastern flank. It's just around where the Carnton plantation is. Joe is actually going to be over at the Confederate Cemetery, and I am here at the battlefield. So if you see on my video a lot of lights in the sky, just know it's not UFOs, but this location is very near to an airport, and so we have lots of planes up in the sky, and it's a very nice night, it's a very nice temperature, and I can see a bunch of stars. Not so much the moon, but stars. So I am going to turn off the night vision. This is with the night vision on. So I'm going to turn off the night vision. And there we go. So again, this is Megan, completing this 4th challenge. Now I have with me my S-Box, but I am wearing headphones. And the reason I'm doing that is just to be respectful in a place where a lot of men died. So I'm going to turn that on. All right. So, hello, my name is Megan. Is there anyone here who would like to communicate? I think it just said Sam. Hello, Sam. I think it just said hello. Where are you from? Are you from Tennessee or are you from somewhere else? I'm originally from New York, but now I live here in Tennessee. Please? Please what? So, I don't know if you're going to be able to see this. I'm guessing not. So, the city of Franklin has been working to reclaim a lot of what is the battlefield of Franklin. They've been working to collect up the land again. There's a few places that they've put on the historic register, and they've been trying to reclaim this land, like I said, to preserve it as part of our history. And so if you walk around this park, they have historical plaques on the walking trail that tell you about some of the different people, some of the different troop movements. And the way I'm facing and trying to keep facing is the direction of the battle. So the Battle of Franklin happened. General Schofield was in charge of the Union portion, and General Hood in charge of the Confederacy. Schofield had been with Sherman in Atlanta, and basically Sherman wanted to move through to the coast fast, and so Schofield was taking, I just heard footsteps. I thought I heard footsteps. Schofield was taking the wagon trail and supplies and stuff like that, because they were just going to do scorched earth and source their supplies as they went along. And so Schofield was trying to get to Nashville to, I may be wrong, to General Thomas. And Hood was pursuing him because Hood's hopes was to catch up with him, defeat him, get to Nashville, defeat Nashville, and then I think pick up recruits as he went through Kentucky and went up to Ohio. And so it was November 29th, 1864, when Schofield kind of got stuck here in Franklin. The Harpeth River was a little bit swollen, and they needed to do work to get across. And so he realized they were not going to be able to cross, and so they fortified at Franklin. And again, this is what was the eastern flank. The Confederates were able to set up a line about 20 miles, but as they came down into Franklin, they ended up condensing down into the line of 1 mile because of the Union, where they had entrenched in Franklin. They just had natural barriers on their flanks to stop them from getting flanked, and so the Confederates were condensed down into 1 mile, and Hood had them do a front charge, so they had to go across 2 miles of open land into where the Union was already. I thought it just said Schofield, so I'm listening again. That sounded like a woman's voice, but I didn't hear what she said. So this Carnton Plantation, as I mentioned, it ended up being one of the buildings that was used as a hospital, and it was the home of the McGavics. There were 44 or something like that different buildings throughout Franklin that ended up being used as hospitals for Confederate and Union wounded. And then the McGavics eventually basically donated a portion of their land to be a Confederate cemetery, which is where Joe is. Hi again, my name is Megan. Is there anyone here who would like to communicate? I'm here just to learn about you and to help you pass on your story. It sounded like I just heard someone who said died. Who is that who is speaking? Is there a message that I can pass on for you? Yes. What is that message? I'm just here to help you. $11? Are there 11 here who want to speak? So honestly, the voice that said died, it sounded pretty clear, and honestly, it sounded a little bit like it had a brogue and Irish accent. And one of the generals for the Confederacy who was in this battle was originally an Irishman. His name was Patrick Cleburne, and it's reported there were a lot of generals who were unhappy about the charge that was being ordered. They had different plans for how to handle this battle, but he was heard saying to one of the other generals something to the effect of, "If we are to die here, then let us die as men." And so he ended up dying at, I believe it was a mill that it is now called Cleburne Park. It is one of the areas that was reclaimed by the city of Franklin to try and, again, make into a park to save and preserve the memory and stop it from being built upon. I think I just heard it say, "Listen, I am listening. I want to help you and pass on your message." I need to. You need to what? Or I need to what? Get up. So if I put that together, the "I need to get up" would sound to me like a residual potential haunting of just picking up the desperation of someone who is wounded. I just heard scared, wounded or scared, and just trying to continue on through the fight. This Battle of Franklin was not one of the most necessarily important battles of the war, but it was one of the bloodiest, and it ended up with a large amount of hand-to-hand combat. When they fortified the Union, they had one line, a very small line up front, and they were supposed to shoot twice at the Confederates as they came across the 2 miles, and then go back to the rest of the fortifications. And either the Union general there didn't understand the command or just didn't follow it. But he and his men stayed, and they kept on fighting. So then by the time that they did try to leave to go back to the fortifications, the Confederates were almost upon them. And so what ended up happening is they couldn't get behind the Union lines without the Union soldiers firing into their own men. And so the Confederates being close up behind them, they ended up just coming right over and cutting short the ability to fire and have a longer distance fight. And so basically right through the heart of Franklin, this ended up all kind of bloodshed. The families that lived there were hiding in basements, and it's reported that when they came out the next day after the battle, they found just the bodies stacked so high that some of them were dead and just still standing because there was no room. Broken? Is there a way that I can help you fix whatever is broken? like I said, I'm very close to Carnton Plantation, and they were used as a hospital for a lot of the Confederates, and eventually when they rounded up, there were many Confederate generals who died in this battle, and they lined them all up on the porch as they were discovering their bodies. But so they used the house as a hospital, and so they were fixing a lot of broken bones, injured men, amputations, and the McGavics had 2 young children, a boy and a girl, 9 and 7 years old, and those children at that young age ended up also helping take care of the wounded. I just heard a woman's voice saying, please, and I can imagine from the days after the battle, family members coming onto the battlefield trying to find signs of their loved ones who may have been involved. The Union troops moved on to Nashville. The Confederates were left here with the chance to bury their dead, and they buried them where they had them, and used anything they could to make markers. I'm sure planning on hopefully coming back and giving them proper burials later. The McGavics ended up collecting money from the residents, but also basically paying anything else that they needed to reinter the Confederate dead into a proper cemetery. Like I said before, that's where Joe is. The McGavics donated a portion of their land to make into a cemetery. I believe that the Union troops that died here are now buried at a cemetery at Stones River, but I'm not 100% certain on that. I just heard peace. No, I wish. I hope that they can be at peace. I apologize if I'm holding this camera all kinds of crooked. I'm keeping it low so the viewfinder doesn't ruin my eyesight in the dark. I just heard a man say, "Hold me." Again, I would imagine that's residual, and that's a soldier in his desperate last moments, hopefully finding comfort with one of his comrades. I'm coming. Who's coming? And again, I could imagine that being residual. There's 2 types of hauntings, human spirits, residual and intelligent. Residual is residual is basically like a place memory, and Joe and I have lots of theories on place memories and the like. And then intelligent would be a spirit that interacts with you. We investigated at the Lotz house, where we think we were having experiences with an intelligent spirit. The Lotz house was basically just at the battle line. Andrew? Is your name Andrew? My name is Megan. I just heard 3 syllables, but I could not understand them. As I said in one of the other videos for these Paragames challenges, something Joe and I like to do, we don't want to just, in case there's an intelligent spirit, we don't want to just go and demand questions. We like to try to do something for the spirits. So like when we know that there's children's spirits, we read stories. One thing, whenever I've come to a battlefield, we've been to a few battlefields, I always think of is an A.E. Housman poem, and it's called Epitaph on an army of mercenaries. He doesn't mean mercenaries, as in soldiers from another place coming in for pay. He's referring to soldiers. But if there is anyone here, I'd like to recite this poem for you. These in the days when heaven was falling, the hour when earth's foundations fled, followed their mercenary calling, took their wages and are dead. Their shoulders held the sky suspended, they stood, and earth's foundations stayed. What God abandoned, these defended, and saved the sum of things for pay. I heard 3 syllables again, but I couldn't make it out. It sounded like homecoming. I hope that you all got to go home one way or another after this. Thank you. You're welcome. So I'm pretty sure that has been 15 minutes. I think it might have been longer. And I'm going to head back now and see if Joe is... Well, we've got a meeting spot, and she's up at the cemetery. But I want to thank What the Paranormal for putting up these Paranormal Games challenges. This is Challenge 4, Haunted Location in the Dark. And just thank you. And anyone who's watching this, thank you as well. Goodbye. Schofield was taking the wagon trail and supplies and stuff like that because they were just going to do scorched earth and source their supplies as they went along. By the time that they did try to leave to go back to the fortifications, the Confederates were almost upon them.